The policeman, whom prosecutors say acknowledge being a lethal shot or firing a lethal shot rather at Nahel, is in a preventative custody under formal investigation for voluntary homicidal. 45,000 police as well as several armored vehicles were deployed overnight to tackle the worst crisis of President Emmanuel Macron's leadership since the Yellow Vest protests. Well, for more on this, let's now cross to SABC News correspondent Cullen. Russ, a very good afternoon to you. Please tell us, how is the current situation at this point out in Paris?
Yeah, we saw 1,300 people arrested Friday night into Saturday. Really, the numbers just have been increasing night by night since the violence began on Tuesday night, pretty much constrained just here in Paris. But then after that, we saw a widening out of the violence, the rioting, looting and arson on Wednesday night and on Thursday night, more and more cities. And then until last night, the highest number of arrests we have seen all week. What took place on Saturday was the funeral of Nahel M, the 17-year-old boy whose fatal shooting on Tuesday by police was the real spark for the outpouring of public anger that we have seen on the streets, the violence, that looting, the rioting and the arson. After that funeral, then all eyes will turn to see if there is a reaction at all, if that funeral, the fact that the boy has been laid to rest, would see a de-escalation in the violence, or if the protest movement is going to be continuing. So the government will be watching this evening, Saturday evening, into the early hours of Sunday morning to see if that does have an impact.
And Ross, speaking of government, I mean, we hear that President Macron has cancelled his visit to Germany due, of course, to the unrest. Now, this must be a serious concern for the French government, eh?
Yeah, that's correct. He spoke to his German counterpart, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the German president, earlier today, and they have decided to postpone the visits in a joint communique. We heard from the French presidency saying that's, quote, given the domestic situation, and saying that the president would rather stay here at the moment in France to be able to deal with the ongoing violence. You may remember that in March, Britain's King Charles III was due here for a state visit, but he had to cancel that visit because of the violence tied to France's ongoing reform. At that time, the uprising against the pension reform suggested by the government. So we've had King Charles cancelling his visit due to the violence related to the pension reforms, Emmanuel Macron cancelling his visit due to the violence related to the killing of Nahel M. So the situation for the government is very tough, and they're going to have to come up with a new strategy this evening to try to suppress what is likely to be a fifth consecutive nights of unrest.
And speaking of that unrest, Ross, are you able to calculate in terms of monetary terms the total amount of some of the destruction that has been caused by the unrest so far?
Yes, we're likely to see a continuation of the unrest today. It is difficult to say whether there will be that de-escalation, whether the people will be starting to step back. President Emmanuel Macron said on Friday he was calling on parents to take responsibility to keep their kids at home. We have seen a lot of 14 and 15-year-olds running around late at night, looting and ransacking shops and making off with televisions and shoes as part of the what some people see as the ongoing demonstration against and in response to the killing of Nahel M. Other people say just part of a symptomatic juvenile delinquency, but there's no doubt that there is a problem deep-seated in France when it comes to the suburbs of cities and the underprivileged, the underinvested, the undersupported communities in those areas, often tough communities, and the division that we have seen between different areas within certain cities. So just here in Paris, there is that division which has been exposed and has had a light shone upon it due to the ongoing 5 days that we've seen of protests.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much to SABC correspondent there in France, that is Cullen, and of course is talking to us about the French protest there.